I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Hello. My name is Kaitlin. I am partially non-speaking autistic ADHD.
I love nature and being creative, and I like doing activities such as drawing and writing stories.
I find this world to be rather strange and kind of scary. People don't say or do things that make sense to me. Their rules are illogical, and everything moves so fast and demands so much that sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating. It takes a lot of energy to process this world. Just existing could be exhausting. But I find the world to be very beautiful too. I can see, hear, feel, and connect to the world in ways that bring me a lot of joy. I currently study online, part-time at university. This is actually my 4th try at university. But let me start with school. I did really well at school. I liked school. It was very structured, with certain places to be at certain times, and often the work was broken down into tasks. I was also good at school because so many of my classes were memory-based, and I'm really good at remembering stuff. My teachers helped me a lot while I was at school, but it was very hard to know what accommodations I was allowed to ask for. If it helps other people, I have made a list of the accommodations that were made for me over my time at school. Noise-cancelling headphones. I was allowed to wear my noise-cancelling headphones so long as they were not playing music and I could still hear the teacher. Leaving class early. I could leave classes 5 minutes early and go through the back doors to avoid the crowded and loud hallways. Sitting outside. I could study outside when the classroom was too loud or busy. Assemblies. I could skip assemblies and just have lunch early. Lights. Sometimes teachers turned the lights off, so we had no artificial lighting. I didn't actually ask for that specifically, it was just something helpful that one of the teachers did. Curriculum text changes. I was allowed to sit outside the classroom and study a different text when my class was studying something that I found too frightening or triggering. As long as students can meet the learning outcomes, it doesn't matter what text they use to do that. Remember, you don't owe anyone your story. You should be allowed to say the accommodations that you need and expect that people will be kind and proper human beings and listen to you without having to have a whole history or explanation as to why you need them. If you ask for an accommodation, that is explanation enough.
I wish schools had some kind of mentoring program, some kind of maybe one-to-one program where neurodivergent students could mentor the younger neurodivergent students. Maybe the senior school students could get paired with a middle school or primary school student, and maybe some alumni students could come back and mentor the senior school students. Just being able to have someone that you can ask questions to or advice about, or just connect to, who understands the world in a similar way that you do, is so important and valuable and really helpful to be able to ask someone, like, how do I ask for this accommodation, or which headphones do you find really helpful, or even just fun things like being able to info dump to someone about a particular passion that you have, and you know that the other person understands what you're doing and why, and can encourage you in that. Having someone that you can be yourself around, because generally speaking, school is not a place where people find it easy to be themselves. I think some schools or universities do have mentoring programs, but that I found they haven't been specific for autistic students specifically. And being mentored by someone who's not autistic, it doesn't work. I always end up educating them instead of the other way around, and I don't want to have to be explaining my existence all the time. I just want to be able to connect to someone who understands, and you can really only do that if the other person is also autistic.
When it comes to academics, I find that it is my ADHD that I need help with the most. A mentor who does not have ADHD will tell me to make a plan or a schedule. But someone with ADHD is probably going to know that that just won't work, or that it won't necessarily be enough. It is the people within the ADHD community who may know about body doubling, or how, when you make a list, you should put 2 or 3 things on it that you've already done, so you can get the dopamine from ticking those things off before you've even really started. I'll link to some of these tips at the end of the video, but basically,
a neurotypical mentor will tell me how to work around my ADHD. A neurodivergent mentor can teach me how to work with my ADHD. There's a difference.
if I could tell my teachers some things, I would want them to know. 1. I liked it when the teachers and students accommodated me without making a big thing out of it. Some accommodations were given to the whole class, so that no one really stood out. For example, with turning off the lights. Sometimes the teacher would say that we were going to use the projector that lesson, so we wouldn't need the lights yet. We then never used the projector. Or we did, but then the lights just never got turned back on again. It was also good when people were upfront about what they couldn't do. It gave us time to work out something else. 2. Please make sure you're getting your information from actually autistic people and organizations. Organizations that are not autistic-led, and presentations given by non-autistic people will not give you the kind of information and insight that the people with a lived experience can give you. We're right here. Just listen.
3. There is a difference between educating someone and traumatizing them. Traumatizing is not teaching. I don't need to study violent content matter to learn the curriculum. Whether that content is a book, a movie, an incursion, or a presentation. It is part of my being autistic, and especially ADHD, to feel my emotions really strongly, to get words and images and stories stuck vividly on loop in my head, and for that ability to, at times, utterly floor me. If I am able to study gentler and lighter texts, I will have energy left over to learn how to navigate and regulate my emotions. Schools need to have these better alternatives. When I say that I can't do something, I mean I can't. Students and their families are the ones who know themselves best. Please listen to them when they are brave enough and knowledgeable enough to tell you what they need.
If I could give some advice to autistic school students, I would want to tell them, if you like school, that is wonderful. I'm so excited for you. But if you don't like school, that's okay. School doesn't have to be your thing. There are so many things that you are good at, and if it's not a school subject, that doesn't mean that it's not important. Make time for your passions. I'm serious when I say that they are vital to your physical and mental health. You are allowed them. They are something to be encouraged and celebrated, something that you can do whenever you need to regulate, relax, or connect to, or disconnect from, the world. For example, is snowflake. I couldn't find a place in the rest of the video for it, but I really like it. So, here's a really sparkly, pretty snowflake for you. Finally, something I learned at school that I really wish someone had told me earlier is that you do not need ATA English to get into university. Lots of people seem to insist that you do. You don't. You just take a STAT test and get in based on that. And it's really not a hard test to do. Remember that your needs are valid and worth fighting for. You deserve a place and people that accept and support you.
I promise you that the rest of the world is not like school. It can be hard to imagine a world, a life outside of graduation, but it is there. And you have so much freedom to create the life that you want outside of school. You don't have to ask for permission to wear your headphones. You just put them on. You don't have to ask anyone for permission to use fidget toys or anything like that. You just get to do it and bring them. You'll find that a lot less people notice or question you about them than you think. And if they do notice, they'll either notice and not ask you about it, or they'll notice it and want to ask you about it, like ask where you got it from. I don't know why schools are so set on certain rules when outside of school the real world is not like that at all.
Outside of school, there is more of a chance for you to find your people, not the people you have to get along with because you just happen to be in the same class. But the people who genuinely choose to spend their time with you, who light up when they see you, and who make accommodations as if doing so is the most logical thing in the world, because of course, it is, duh. University was a lot harder than school. The content was actually really easy. The trouble was with organizing my own schedule and my own routine, the stuff that school normally gave me. and knowing how to plan assignments when we were given so little guidance. I'm really glad to know that I'm autistic and ADHD. Knowing gives me the chance to understand how my brain works, find ways to work with it, and connect to other people who are just like me. If I could give some advice to autistic university students, I would want to say,
at university, I realized that because my brain can take in and process so much information really quickly, I often get bored in lectures quite fast because it feels like the lecturers are talking very slowly, and so I get bored. But being autistic also means that being able to process information really quickly gets tiring very quickly as well. So I end up watching the recorded lectures either on double speed because I can keep up with the faster pace, but I can also pause it at any time and take a break if I need to. Or I read the transcript of the lecture because then I can take in the information without any of the audio processing requirements. So that's really helpful.
I have learned to listen to my energy levels, and while life after school has a lot less structure, it does mean that there is more flexibility for managing the days that have fewer spoons. The goal is to be able to study and still have energy left over to function in and enjoy other things in your life. Balance is important for avoiding burnout. Some days we'll have party metal spoons, where you can manage more tasks. Other days we'll have flimsy paper spoons, where just being awake hurts. On these days, your only job is to exist. Be gentle with yourself. Search for spoons, or let them find you. Today can wait until tomorrow. I make a list of the tasks that I have to do on a certain day, but I don't put them in any certain order. This way, my ADHD gets to feel spontaneous by picking anything off the list, but it's structured enough that my autistic self doesn't panic. I would also say to remember that university does not have the same expectations as school. At school, I was used to taking notes from all the textbooks. University does not expect you to do this. No one told me this until my mum realized that I was trying to take notes on my 4 or 5 readings that were about 50 to 100 pages long, each, for every unit, every week. Now I've learned that you can just skim the readings, or read only the abstract, maybe make note of the theme, and come back to it if it will be useful for an assignment. Your lecturer will not see any of the notes that you make, only the assignment you submit. So focus on writing that well. Another point. Don't panic if academic integrity feels daunting. It's drilled into everyone because they want you to take it seriously. But no one wants to expel you. Your lecturers and tutors want to help you, and they know that you're new to all of this. If you make a mistake, they'll teach you. That's their job. I would also say that self-advocacy is really important. Your needs are valid, and having the skills and self-confidence to ask for what you need is very helpful. So for me, that means using AAC more often, because that is how I can get my words across more easily, which means I can do more things on my own. Trust yourself. You know yourself the best, even though at times it may not feel like it. It takes practice to learn your brain's cues and triggers and coping strategies, and it may take some trial and error. If you are seeking a diagnosis, be it autistic or ADHD or something else, and if people are not listening to you, or are being dismissive of you, don't give up. If someone tells you that you can't be autistic or ADHD because of something along the lines of, you're a girl, you're smart, you give eye contact, you can talk verbally, and or it's just anxiety, then that person is wrong. You can be autistic and or ADHD, and have, or be, any of the above. If you're told it's just anxiety, then ask why that anxiety exists. You may find that anxiety is actually masking something else. Read, Google, talk to people, gather words, and see if you can find ones that match you. Take some time to gather your spoons, lean on a support network, have someone make the phone calls, or emails, or go to appointments with you, be it a friend, family member, or disability advocate, which are often free, by the way. I'm sorry that the system can feel so broken, sometimes. There are people who will believe you. You will find answers. I'm sorry that the system can feel so broken, sometimes. It is the system that is broken, not you. And if you find advocating for yourself to be exhausting, then just remember that yes, it is exhausting. So make sure to take care of yourselves, do the things that bring you joy, and connect with people who do understand you. On the days when you feel like you're standing in the shadows, remember that shadows are not created without light. Keep going. In time, the shadows will move, and you'll be standing with your face in the sun, again. You don't have to do people all the time. Sometimes, I think cats have the right idea. Food, sleep, and hugs. What is AAC? AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. It basically means any form of communication that is not vocal speech, for example, sign language, gestures, written words, or pictures. Who can use AAC? Absolutely anyone can use AAC. There are no rules as to who can use it. You can have vocal speech. You are still allowed to use AAC. Using AAC is like learning real-life forms of magic. Suddenly, I'm able to engage with the world, and still have energy left over to actually enjoy it. There are many reasons why I may use AAC. Sometimes it's more accurate than speech. Sometimes I don't have access to speech, and still need a way to communicate. To prevent the sensory overload that may come with having to use out loud words. Or to conserve energy so that I can actually enjoy the event I am at. And sometimes, I use AAC because it's just easier, or I want to, and there doesn't have to be anything more to it than that. Communication is a human right. And guess what? Autistic people are human. That was stating the obvious. Of course we're human. I just mean that it shouldn't be so hard to accommodate something as important as someone's communication needs. If you use AAC, I see you. Remember that you are not worth less because you talk with technology or any other form of non-speech. For other people, value communication, not the ability to use my mouth. Don't congratulate me for using my voice. Speech is not worth more than written words. Don't speak to someone like they're a child or can't understand you. Using AAC tells you nothing about my intelligence. Focus on what I say, not the method I use to say it. If you use AAC, believe that what you have to say is important. This can be hard if you are used to missing out on conversations or having people speak over or for you. But you have so many good things to say. Don't be afraid to ask people to wait or to tell people that you want to type something. I'll try if you will. Other people might need to intentionally make space in the conversations, especially in a group. Things like, what do you think? Or, hold up, I think, name, has something to add, may help. People with AAC need access to it at all times. Make space so a physical device can stay within reach. If you're meeting online, make sure there is a chat box, or whatever feature they need. In the same way that someone can't just put tape over your mouth at any random time, you can't take, or change, or move someone else's means of communication without asking them first. Finally, talk to me. It's a lot easier, for both sides, when people ask me questions and speak directly to me than when they make assumptions or judgments about who I am or what I need.
You are worth fighting for. You are worth all the good things.
You belong here. I promise you.